Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the Take a Stand show. I can see some familiar faces that are in the comment section right now, so I want to do a big shout out. I can see Karen Sachs-Epley right there, and I want to say, hey, Karen, great to see you here today. But I also want to introduce you to my very, very special guest that I have on the show with me today. You guys know that when you tune into the Take a Stand show, we talk with women from all over the world who have got inspirational, motivational, and heartfelt stories, and stories of them being able to overcome any adversity or challenges in their life to go on to achieve amazing things. And I can tell you right now that the woman I have on the screen and on the show with me today, she is an absolute warrior. You can see her name is Wendy Bjork. She's an MS warrior. She's also known, AKA, as the MS Warrior Queen. And I just want to make sure that today you guys get a real opportunity to hear Wendy's story, and you also get to, I suppose, unpack some of the things that she has done to really be able to overcome some, I'm going to say, significant adversity and challenges that she's had in her life. And I'm not going to tell you too much about that because I'm going to leave that all to Wendy to kind of share her story and what she's experienced over the last 30 years. But what I can tell you is that after you hear her story today, you're going to see how to tell your own story, how to take what Wendy has done and be able to adapt that to your life. So if you've got an adversity or you've overcome some sort of challenge, listen very carefully to what she has to say, because she has taken that and she now is able to share her story in a very raw and real way. And she's been able to become the voice for those that are suffering in silence. So firstly, I want to applaud her for that. And I want to say welcome to the show, Wendy. It's fantastic to have you here.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
You're welcome. Great to have you here. So I want to first start with, I'm going to kind of rewind like 30 years, Wendy, and give everybody a little bit of a background story as to where this journey of sharing your story in a real and raw way kind of started. There was something that kind of kicked off that was quite traumatic, I'm going to say, just that kind of started this journey, but has led you to the point that you're at now. So let's give everybody a little bit of an insight into how that came about.
So when I was 16 or 17, I started having these weird symptoms. And a simple hot bath would trigger it. I would get out and my legs would feel like spaghetti. And then they would have tingling or numbing feelings. And I would mention it to the doctor, but they didn't think anything of it and just kind of ignored it. And this went on for years. And I went through college and had my first real full-time job. And I had a bad attack where it was like someone had their hand over my mouth and I couldn't speak. Like I had the words, but they wouldn't come out. So that sent me to a neurologist to figure out what was really happening with me. Because all those years, 5, 6 years, I just kind of ignored it like the doctors were doing.
Or that they had, put it down to maybe, growing pains or, teenage stuff that was going on at that time. And so moving forward, like, what did you do? There was this time where obviously this was happening. You were feeling that, things are just not right. I mean, how long did that actually go on for until such time as you kind of got somebody to like, listen to me, there's something not quite right here. Like, what was that moment and how did you get to that point?
It was finally after I had that bad attack of losing my speech that, and that was 6 years after those first feelings started. So for 6 years, it just, little things kept happening that I would just kind of ignore because I thought nobody else is thinking anything of it either. So it must be in my head or my imagination. I don't know. And then finally I saw one neurologist who couldn't decipher what was happening, but he did ask for an MRI, which this is the early 90s and it's very new technology. So the first hurdle was getting my health insurance to pay for it. And even after I had it done and they saw some spots on my brain that were suspicious, I still had to see 4 or 5 more neurologists before I had a tag to put on it or a label.
Mm. And obviously through that process, you were, searching for the answers and searching for a tag or a label to like what is going on, what is wrong with me, how can I, put a label on it. Why is that labeling of something in that moment so important? Like how was that kind of the catalyst for the improvement or the change that was about to unfold?
I think maybe it's human nature. We need to know what it is before we can deal with it. And just to rewind a bit, my grandmother had horrible rheumatoid arthritis and just sat in a chair all day. And she passed away when I was 13. But I think just knowing what her life was like, I didn't want to live like that. I wanted to live. I was young. My friends were all doing what they wanted and having a fun life. And I didn't want to be stuck in a chair of any sort. So that really influenced my whole outlook, of just taking charge of it and not letting it take my life over.
So with that, I mean, being able to, I suppose, look into the future, which you did with your grandma, and going, gosh, that's not what I want to have happen for me. And you mentioned, taking charge of things and being able to, label it. Now I know and I understand what this is that I'm actually dealing with. And what were some of the things that you did to take charge of what was going on, so that you didn't go down that kind of trajectory of, gosh, this is going to be the outcome and this is the future that I'm looking at it right now and right in front of my eyes. And if I don't take control of this, then potentially that could be the outcome that I'm also facing. What did you do to take control?
Well, unfortunately, when I was first diagnosed, I was in my early 20s, and I had a good positive attitude. I had a strong faith. And my boss at the time was into personal development. So he would send me to seminars, as in Stephen Covey or Brian Tracy. And I think he tried to disguise it as giving me the tools to deal with this, because he would say, when I would go, that I should come back and teach the rest of our coworkers what I learned, except they were twice my age and didn't listen to me about anything.
Mm-hmm.
So just going forward and trying to use those tools, I still was just sort of doing what I wanted to. I wasn't paying attention to what I was eating or drinking. And it took me another probably 10 years to get to the point of my symptoms being so bad. That's when I finally decided to really take a good hard look at what I was doing with my life, because what I was doing wasn't working. My neurologist said I was going to end up in a wheelchair because I could barely walk.
Well, firstly, I want to say, and Vicky Helm saying here, yeah, wow, what a smart boss. Absolutely. I mean, thank goodness he had the nous to open up that world to you. And I know that in reading your bio, and obviously now just, hearing you say, I had a very, kind of like a positive approach to what was going on. And we all know that when we move down that space of personal development, it really does transport you into understanding that, a lot of what we, being able to control things has to do with our mind. And if we can keep that in a very positive place, that can have a very beneficial outcome for us. So congratulations to that man or lady who was your boss. Very smart. So through that process, Wendy, and really understanding that you could do something about it, and it started with that early on, going to seminars and understanding that our mind has a big part to play with it, and then you realizing that, hang on a minute, the lifestyle that I'm leading right now is not really playing well into the situation that I have. What changes do I need? And realizing I've got to make some changes here. So what was the realization that you had, And how did you go about making the changes, and what impact has that actually had on your diagnosis of MS?
So it was probably 15 years into the diagnosis, then my neurologist told me I was heading down the wrong road. I would end up in a wheelchair. And he didn't really agree with my, I guess, suggestions for changing what I was eating or drinking. But I guess I just took it into my own hands and started really researching and reading and doing other courses on what causes inflammation in our body and how we can help ourselves that from that aspect of, what we eat or drink or what we're bringing into our home, what we're using to even wash our clothes. And back then I loved candles. Especially since it's so cold here in the winter, I would have them going, on a Saturday all day long, and then just notice that I would just not feel right. So that was this whole, I guess, occurrence of figuring everything out and not realizing how every single thing that we expose ourselves to impacts us in our bodies.
Isn't that, it's really interesting that you should talk about this. And I think it's something that we don't often even, we're not even consciously aware of these things. Like you say, I mean, something as simple as I really like candles. I mean, I do too. If I look around my home right now, I've got quite a few of them that I put on a fairly regular basis. But, just really understanding that, like you said, looking at this from a holistic point of view of, if I'm going to take control, if I'm going to stand up and stand firm for me and what I believe, what I feel to be the right thing for me to do, because most of us would trust the doctor, we would trust the diagnosis that you've got and the advice that you're given, and we often dismiss then our intuition, what we really feel is the right thing to do for us. And fortunately for you, you've obviously really listened to that and went, hang on, I'm going to take a slightly different approach to this. I'm going to look at this from a very holistic point of view. So let's talk through kind of all of the elements of this holistic view that you have. Like, what were all the things that you looked at, and how did you sort of, because it's a big thing. Like, when I'm now thinking about that, I'm like, whoa, that's huge to start thinking about everything I've got in my home, everything I put in my mouth, everything that I drink, everything that I touch and I expose myself to. That in itself could be quite an overwhelming to even just think about. How did you break that down, and what were some of the things that you started with or that you noticed made the biggest difference?
I just started with my laundry room. I stopped using dryer sheets and the fabric softeners and the scented laundry soaps. I started there, and then I just kept going. Then it was the kitchen cupboard of the floor cleaners and the counter cleaners. And once you really start looking at what's in some of those bottles, it's frightening. And from there I went to the bathroom cleaners. It was just like a domino effect. It's just everywhere.
When you say it's frightening, I'm like, yeah, oh my God, as you're talking about this, I'm doing this mental visit to my laundry and my bathroom and the under sink to just, refresh my memory of what I've got in there, because you tend to buy things that, they smell nice. So we don't often take the time to really pay attention to what's in them. I want to know, why did you start in the, like, of all places? I mean, to me, that sounds very quite random that you would start in the laundry, where most people would start with what I'm going to put in, what I'm ingesting, what am I going to put in my mouth? Why the laundry? Why did you go there?
I had read several articles that just described, what is in our laundry soap. And then you're laying on that all night and your head is on that pillow case all night. And then, the clothes are on your skin all day. And then when they're in your closet, they're still off-gassing into your rest of your home. So it's something that's with you all the time.
We've got to ask this question now because that was just a huge, like, open loop that we just created there. Was so if we're not using the standard, laundry powders that we can buy from the supermarkets, what is the alternative? Like, what was the switch that you made?
So I have switched everything. It's called the Wellness Company. It's based in the US, and I believe you have access to it in Australia as well. But they've been around since 1985, and they use natural enzymes. This is just in their laundry soap, for example. They use enzymes to clean potato starch, essential oils, and they're actually the original essential oil company in the US. So they have such nice products that are healthy for you. And I just can't believe the difference that it makes.
Did you find that? I mean, I know that you sort of did this progressive, like, examination of what was going on in your home. Did you sort of do one thing and then do a bit of a test and measure as to, like, did that impact me? Did that make a change before you moved on to the next thing? Was that sort of a process of, like, roll things out very systematically and intentionally?
It was quite a system, and it probably took me 4 years to figure it all out because I would try oodles of products to see if they actually worked, and most of the time they didn't work. And I had two little boys, and you know how kids get their clothes dirty. So
Hmm.
it's just, like I said, it was just constant testing of products against, the ingredients, and I just became a very good label reader. I couldn't pronounce it. I just wouldn't have it in my home.
Well, and that's a great, again, one of those things, reading labels. And I know I've started to do this a lot too when I'm reading labels on, jars and what have you. But yeah, often we can't read it. If it comes with a whole lot of numbers and something that you can't pronounce, probably a good idea not to put that in your body. So, taking that advice from you, Wendy, in terms of if you can't understand it, you can't pronounce the word, steer clear, right? Would that be the message? Just give it a very wide berth and go to something that is is natural.
Well, and they're actually getting trickier, I guess, in the US. I'm not sure by you, but they're combining combining the words, or shortening the words, I should say, so that we don't really know what's in there. And then the other thing that's happening is the synthetic chemicals that are being put into products, they don't fully disclose those either. And I think it's about 80,000 different synthetic chemicals that have been released in the US, and that's since the 1940s. So that's a lot of chemicals in that short of a time.
So I know that through this journey that you've gone through and you've experienced yourself, nowadays being the MS warrior and really, taking that stand of, there are a lot of men and women out there who are suffering silently with this, with this illness, and they don't even know that maybe they don't know that they've got it. They're wondering what the heck is wrong with me, or they're even like wondering, what do I do? Or I don't want to share this because it's like, it feels like it's an invisible illness and it's got a lot of stigma around it. How, what advice would you give to somebody whom, and it may not necessarily even be MS, because this is something that is commonplace with a lot of, let's call them invisible illnesses. We have them, we suffer through them, and we often feel as though we have to suffer in silence because we're either embarrassed or we don't want to have to deal with the stigma that's associated with it. How do you help people deal with that side of things?
So this is what you described. This was me. I would rather not talk about it to alleviate more questions, or have people compare how they felt to how I felt. And this was up until about 3 or 4 years ago. I would just not talk about it because it's easier to have that mask on of I am fine and I can do it, even though I would go home and fall into bed because whatever I was doing would exhaust me. So it's just so important to have somebody that you can speak with. That's that human connection.
So after sort of feeling that way yourself, what was the turning point when you thought, do you know what? I can't be silent any longer. I have to speak up about this and what's going on with me. And not just what's going on with me, but how do I take that even, you know, steps further in now I actually have to become the, the voice of this. I have to become an MS warrior queen. How did you do that? What was that journey and what sort of made you decide this is the way I'm going? This is what I need to stand up for?
Well, I have a very strong faith, and I've had, I guess, messages given to me that I was helped being healed and shown how to heal, and now it's my job to show others how to begin their healing journey.
So it's almost as if you have had a calling and it's now your, let's call it, duty is probably not quite the right word, but you feel there's a real um, uh, sense of a need for you to be the person to step up and help others heal in the same way that you have, because over that period of time you've obviously done a lot of things to discover what has actually made a real difference in your life. Now you have something called, and let me just the Four Cornerstones Program. Let's talk a little bit about that, because I know that is about empowering men and women, to other women mainly, how to improve their mind, their body, their relationships, and their environment using the Four Cornerstones Program. So would you like to share with us, like, what is the Four Cornerstones Program? How does that work? And what sort of things do you do to help women that are suffering with the MS right now?
So this came about because I realized how many gaps in care exist. In the US, you have about 20 minutes with your doctor for their appointment, and they spend most of the time watching you walk, talk about your medicine, and they don't really ask about the other areas of your life. If you have support at home, if you have someone to speak to, if you're watching what you eat and drink, and what you're bringing into your home that just aggravates your symptoms even more. And so as part of my whole diving into, I guess, doing a lifestyle reset for my home and self and family, I just realized I need to share this. And that's why I just walk with women on their journey to give them the support that they need, because so many people don't even have someone to talk to about this. I've just noticed it on social media even that, there's thousands of women, whose husbands have left them or partners have left them because they can't deal with this illness or with them being sick and needing extra help. And it's just heartbreaking. So just to be there by their side and to give them the tools to create this new lifestyle.
And someone else is saying this too, that they, that lifestyle reset. I love that approach that you've taken with, okay, so this is my lifestyle right now. What do I need to do to assess this? Creating a lifestyle reset, but then, taking it that step further and creating that safe space for other women to feel like they are connected with other people who understand what's going on, that they have that level of support. And like you say, with the traditional or the mainstream sort of medical system that deals with people who have, whatever the illness is, it tends to be very, let's call it, one dimensional or focused on how do I help to almost not even cure what's going on, but mask what's going on so that the problem kind of gets masked up and goes away, but it never ever does. All we're doing is actually layering something on top of something else to camouflage it, and then we end up creating another problem in another area. So I love the fact that you're taking this very holistic approach to sort of understanding what's going on with the human, with the person, in an all areas approach. So I know that you've also written a book and you've been an author with the National MS Society that's been sharing your story. Would you like to tell everybody about that book, and maybe those that would like to get a copy of it, where they could go to purchase that?
Yes, it is on my website, which is heartsofwellness.com. And along with the National MS Society, I guess that came about because I just feel like some of the articles that get published that seemed a little too fluffy. And when I talked to the editors, I told her, nobody talks about like the bathroom problems that happen when people have MS, because the myelin is gone, so your brain can't communicate with areas of your body like ever again. And so that was my first article I sent her, and I was kind of shocked that she didn't know that happens sometimes, but I said nobody talks about it. So that was just one aspect, where people are just talking amongst themselves on these MS sites, but nobody else talks about it because it's embarrassing. And, you might only be 20 years old, but you have toilet issues, for example. Mm-hmm. So I just really want to be open about, what goes on and what happens, and to be that resource for people, because I couldn't find somebody like me. I just wanted a person to show me what to do. It would have saved me a lot of years of trying products and figuring things out, so I really just collapsed a timeline for them to just get going instead of muddling through it.
And like you say, often, when we're faced with a challenge or a problem in our life, we start to, the first thing we tend to do these days is you jump on Google, you're trying to find whatever you possibly can to, to help you deal with the situation better, cure it, whatever that, or just deal with it and live a normal life every day. But often that isn't always as easy as it sounds. And often, like you said, there might be a lot of the positives, but not always, some of the other things that maybe people don't want to speak about. And you being able to bring light to that, enabling people to understand that, hey, it's okay. This is actually really normal, and I'm not alone on this, on this journey. And there is somebody out there that I can reach out to, that I can, be part of their community, and like you said, collapse the learning curve and the pathway to resetting their lifestyle really quickly, so they don't have to go through what you went through, which was trial and error of testing multiple things. Now that you've tested that, you've systemized and put that into a really beautiful product that's now able to help lots and lots of people. Part of what I wanted to help people with today too is because you are somebody who has gone down that path. You have recognized that, hey, I had a challenge, and I went down the path of like trying to figure out on my own how to manage this, how to live my life on an everyday basis that I'm okay with, that allows me to live, normally. What was it that, like, if you were to give somebody some advice about how to take their challenge, their adversity that they've had in their life, and actually be able to turn it into something like you have, that is a cause for good, that is a cause for helping others that are suffering in silence, like you had been, what advice would you give them?
I think just being your own advocate. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and always take a notebook with you, because that would be my problem, is I would ask questions and I wouldn't have anything to write with. I'd forget it at home. And I don't want to replace any of the medical professionals. Like I have mentioned, it's just something that I'm just here to share with people. And I guess if you have something inside you, we all have an inner voice. So just listen to it and let it speak.
Absolutely. And I think there's some key pieces of advice that you've just given there is to be that person who stands up and advocates for yourself. So that being the first thing, like listening to your, your intuition, your gut, like knowing, hey, I actually need to take this further. So that would be the first thing. And then I think the second piece of brilliance you've given there, which, a lot of the time you might say, well, that sounds really simple. But like you say, a lot of the time we forget to do it, which is to take a pen and a notebook and actually start to document things. And I suspect that because you did that, that then almost created a lot of the material that you would be able to use and continue to share. Because had you not done that, you probably would go back and think, gosh, now how did I do that? What was the process that I followed? So I think that's a very key piece of advice or a share that you've just given everybody is to document your journey, and whether it's something that you're facing a challenge with right now, or you're even just figuring out something new. That piece of advice still stands strong, as to to document the journey, because further down the track, that is how you can take what you know and the journey that you've taken and actually turn it into something that you now can help others with. You can start sharing your story in a very real and raw way, and that enables you to become the voice of those who who are out there, who are suffering in silence. So before we dial out on today, Wendy, I just wanted to give you an opportunity too to share anything else that you think would be would be useful for other people whom not necessarily maybe just suffering with MS, but have got some sort of challenge that they're going through. What piece of advice would you give them to help them move forward and feel like they can do so proudly and confidently?
You need to tell yourself, I love you at least once a day. And I know that sounds silly, but that is my goal, that all of my clients can do that, because there's so many negative, I guess, influences in our world that you just need to love yourself and give yourself grace.
Well, thank you so much. And I want to thank you so much for being here today. Before we head off, I have to ask you this, because I know that we've got some people even listening to today and are going to be listening to, to the replay of this. Where can they go if they want to explore your program, or they want to explore more about you, Wendy? Where can they go to get that support? Is the best place your website?
Yes, that is, my website is the best place, theheartsofwellness.com. And that's just kind of my project area. So I have all my prior podcasts that I've appeared on. It has my journal that I created, because it's everything that I should have had all these years, where it has a symptom tracker and a gratitude journal and all kinds of neat things in it. So those are the place to download my ebooks and all those goodies.
Well, there you go, guys. So head on over to heartsofwellness.com, and you can find all the goodies there that Wendy has to share with everybody. So today I want to say thank you so much for being here. Thank you for using your journey to actually stand up and stand firm on what you believe in, and you're standing out by helping other women. So I want to say thank you very much for doing that. And you can hear more of Wendy. Go on over to heartsofwellness.com. If you need some assistance and you're thinking, gosh, I'm dealing with this problem myself, and I'm feeling like, it's an invisible illness. I'm feeling like I'm invisible, and I don't want to, I'm feeling like I don't want to share this with anybody. Then I would encourage you to get involved in Wendy's programs, that you do have that support there, that you have somebody there to talk to, and that can give you that, the fast track and some really useful tips and changes that you can make to your lifestyle so that you can start resetting it today. So thank you so much for being here. You've been a wonderful guest. I want to thank everybody else for dialing in and listening today. If you would like to listen to the replay of this show, you can head on over to Tracy M. Wilson on YouTube. You can also download the Take a Stand podcast, and you can make sure that you listen to this story again, because inside of it there have been some real gems that Wendy has shared with us today, and she has shared with you little gems as to how you too can share your story in a very powerful way to make a real difference and leave a legacy on this earth. So thanks very much for joining me today. I'm going to be back again with another episode of Take a Stand next Thursday, 10 a.m. Brisbane, Australia time. So thanks very much, everybody, and have a fantastic day. Bye for now.